The Prophet Muhammad lived then in a place that had also a pagan religion, which is documented but only through Muslim sources. And those sources do reveal enough which we can compare to other primal religions and primal paganisms in different places, and especially to other Semitic paganism in the Middle East, to know that it reflected some typical aspects of paganism, including idol worship and bloody sacrifices to idols and such concerns as that. And that religion was a major source of income anyway for the city of Mecca also. The early facts of the biography of Muhammad, when we take these parts here, you can find that in the biography of Ibn Hisham, about 1/7 of the biography is devoted to that period, about 1/7 to that, and about 5/7 to this period. That reflects a usual truth in history that what is more recent is better documented. That's just an axiomatic thing. And naturally, since here there was no preaching of Islam at all yet, and here only to a few people in Mecca, and here to thousands of people in Medina by the end of the Prophet's life, naturally there are more witnesses here and more likelihood that information will be transmitted and carried down. Furthermore, this 7th contains a lot of material that is not about the biography of the Prophet, but is sort of background material, including some of what I've been saying. So it's even smaller than that, even though the number of years here is much more than here. The Prophet's early life is fairly obscure, and the number of, or the amount of information about it is slight. There is, however, one type of information which is very plentiful, and that is the genealogical information. The family tree of the Prophet and all the Prophet's relatives is something that has been recorded and handed down in enormous detail, so that all of his aunts and uncles and cousins and so on can all be seen in huge, enormous detail, and that is handed down in great detail. And that does enable us to make a lot of connections and see how various things turned out because of relationships that were familial clan relationships that were operating. Of course, the clan, that counted as everything. And to some extent, it could be argued that the Prophet's greatest accomplishment, at least his greatest political accomplishment, was overcoming the clan organization of Arabia and substituting a new and different organization, an Islamic organization, for it. That was a tremendous change for that to take place, and itself shows the acute drama of the situation that existed in the life of the Prophet. The facts about the Prophet's life, such as are known, are then that he was born at this time in Arabia when the Roman and Persian empires were at a brief period of peace far to the north, but in Arabia that they probably hardly heard tell of what was going on there. It was so remote. And he was born the only child of a man who died before he was born, and a woman who died a few years later, and who had then no actual brothers and sisters, siblings himself. So he had his cousins, his uncles, and so on. Those were his siblings, or those were his close relatives. And he was born into a clan which had a considerable prestige as being part of the premier clan that had supposedly had actually politically dominated Mecca for some generations, but he himself was considered to belong to a poor branch of that. Nevertheless, he worked as a merchant, especially after he married Khadija, and she being a wealthy businesswoman, so he would trade in the caravans for her, and some of those caravans may have gone to Syria, so he may have had contact with that area. Anyway, that was said to be when he was 25 and she was 40. Although in that charming story. There is another version that says she was 5 years older than he rather than 15, even though the version that says she was 15 years older is the one that's preferred. So he married her, say, circa the year 594. So she would have been born about 554. Their children, which were, at least according to the history, 2 sons who died in infancy and 4 daughters who grew to adulthood, although they all died young. These children must have been born then between 595 and 604. And of course, if Khadija would have been born in 554, she would have been 50 in 604. And she had been married twice before, so that is just barely possible. In other words, her age might have been slightly less than that, hard to tell. Anyhow, and this seemed to have been a happy arrangement with the large number of daughters that were born and so on. But